awesome. You should be out there. So I want to get you out there
Oh,
more.
thanks. You're so
Yeah.
sweet.
Okay, we are live. This is Amanda Marino, owner of Next Level Recovery Associates. I am here with Candace Mckenzie, who is just incredible. We were chit-chatting a little bit before. So I've had Danielle, who's doing outreach with me, talk to some of our community partners, and we're trying to, highlight some amazing people doing amazing work in our community, both locally and nationally. And Candace has been doing that for a long time. And so I want to welcome you, Candace. If you could just share a little bit about who you are and what you do, and just kind of let people know a little bit about you.
Thank you. Thanks, Amanda, so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And we had such a nice little chat before. So I'm excited to really talk about, women in recovery, and very passionate about that subject matter, and sort of supporting my community of lovely women strong in our recovery. A little bit about my background is I am a licensed marriage and family therapist, both in California and Georgia. Really that sort of whole journey began with my, sort of the trials and tribulations of going through a terrible eating disorder. I've been in recovery now for about 22 years. So woohoo, super excited about that, to share that with the community, that if anybody can find recovery, if I found recovery, anybody can find recovery, because I had it done really good. And we'll certainly talk a little bit about that too, as far as sort of the masking, if you will, and, how it's presenting in the world. But it's a very typical story. I found recovery. I found the most amazing women's support group that just worked for me, that I felt safe. I literally just blindly walked into this group. I just feel like my higher source just lifted me up. I don't even know how I ended up there. I just walked into this group. I was scared to death, and it just was magical. It opened up so many doors for me. I fell into, not just a support group, but finding individual therapists, the registered dietitian. And then it was like, I did the journey, started healing, and I was like, oh gosh, I would really love to be able to do this and be able to give back. Not just, it's more about sharing your story, helping others. And again, just blindly walked into that. My higher source was like, you can do this. And so, but today really, I really wanted to put the LMFT to the side, because I really wanted to talk just as a woman first and foremost. You and I were talking about this, somebody who's in recovery, really sort of supporting our lovely community of women, and just really start talking about the barriers and the obstacles that I think women have, and still being a marginalized community. And I'm really careful to say that anything I'm speaking about today is certainly my own experience. I think we've come a long way. And so anything I'm saying is not black or white. It's just, hey, I just want to bring this into, let's talk about this and have some sense of awareness.
Absolutely. And I do want to just, I see Blake, my business partner, for the next 2 weeks, because then I will be on my own in 2 weeks.
Yay.
But my business partner, 4 years, chimed in and said, hi there, important topic and discussion. We're on a lot of platforms. We're on Facebook Live. We're on LinkedIn Live. We're on YouTube Live, Instagram Live. So if anyone has any questions or comments or experience or anything that you want, please put it in the comments, and we will definitely be responding to you. So, we talked about this prior, like coming from that, you have the clinical eye and the clinical lens, and then you have the personal experience, which to me is so incredible. I think there's so much benefit to having the professional and the lived experience.
Mm-hmm. And you and I were also talking too, was not just the eating disorder for me, was also having a parent who had bipolar, and who also had a really rough cocaine addiction, overusing psychotropics, systemic issues with our healthcare system. So just kind of all that entrenched all in one too. So just this topic today was I, immediately when you and I were talking, I was like, I would really love to be able to advocate and to just throw some thoughts out there for all of us to think about. And I hope that, I'm not sure if this is interactive. I hope people jump in and ask questions.
It is. It can be. It just depends on like who's on. So we have a Diana Wilson that said, women helping and empowering women. Love that. Yes, that's one of the things of today. And also, because I had Dr. Dawn Nickel, who started She Recovers, the founder. She had commented on her post and said, what is this topic going to be on? And I said, really all things women in recovery. So when you think of this topic, what is the first thing that comes to your heart that you would like to discuss?
I really want to address what I feel are the barriers in access to care and appropriate assessment for women. I feel like we are still marginalized when it comes to this sort of connection with, oh my gosh, a woman, she would, I'm not going to be assessing her for substance use disorder or even mental health issues or dare I say eating disorders. But and because typically I think that most physicians, not all, tend to think of men, especially with substance use disorder. I will certainly say that they tend to think that men are going to be they're going to be much more of the community that will be using versus a woman coming in there and overusing pain medications or certainly alcoholism.
Yes.
And so that's something I would just really want to address. And again, not marginalizing, I'm not saying everybody. I'm just saying put a thought into it that if you have a client that's walking into, your office or your facility, that you're fully doing that full biopsychosocial, and you're really, if something's coming up for you, then finding a way to ask those questions. We all know on those sort of informed consents, like, how many alcoholic beverages are you using illicit drugs. We kind of see that on those informed consents when you go to physician, but also like asking. And if there's a certain sort of presentation, asking that instead of making an assumption, and
Absolutely.
also having the awareness that it's not what you say, it's how you say it. And so I do think that there's something to be said for looking at shame and judgment as a top tier issue, I feel like, when it comes to our community. And I just feel like that you and I were talking about, like,
Yes.
it's certainly in my societal norms and I'm from the South too. So, how I was brought up was to be small, and to be small, not only in stature, not only in, how it presented in this world, but also emotionally and my emotional intelligence to be small, that
Yes.
my worth was so much about how I could be elegant and stay below the radar,
Yeah.
how I could look pretty and be perfect and always smiling and always bubbling. And that certainly played into my eating disorder for so many years, where when you and I were talking before, I had it done really good. I was a great actress. I knew how to wear baggy clothes. I kind of knew how to just say, no, everything is fine. I'm not
Yes.
really hungry. I ate a big meal before. It's been a very stressful week. I'm doing XYZ. Maybe that's why I'm not looking, I'm looking extra frazzled.
Yeah.
So,
You
yeah,
played that small part under the radar, like you were conditioned to, very well.
yes, yeah. And yeah,
Yeah. We
so,
have
and I also,
Steph is saying hello. She said, "Hugs to you, fabulous lady. Thank you for joining forces."
yay. Oh, that's sweet. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. Yeah, but I feel like you and I were talking about the assessment is really important too, as well, to address kind of not only what's going on in their history, their family history too is important to know. Sometimes they'll ask that, but to really sort of address that as well, as far as what was going on, with your family, your family of origin. Was there family addiction? Was there family eating disorder? Was there mental health issues? What's currently going on for you? What are some life transitions that are happening for you right now?
Right.
In the life transitions, this was something else I feel like is important when it relates to female identifying or women clients who are identifying as women also too, is that transitional time. And dare
Yes.
I say menopause, which no
Transition.
one really addresses.
There's
Yeah.
transitional times as a woman, and there's so many things that we go through that aren't talked about. Right?
Yes.
All of those hormonal things, and the one you just said, the
Yes.
unspoken.
Yeah. I feel like that is so dismissed by many physicians. And also, I think even as a clinician, I was never really trained on how to support that. Like, how do I support that other than validation? What does that look like? What does that feel like? And I don't think unless you've been through it, you really have an understanding of what happens. It's an out of body experience. I mean, my personal experience was I didn't feel in my body anymore. My body just, it just stopped working the way it worked before. My gosh, just the way I could regulate myself, was completely different. The hills and the valleys of just crying for, no reason whatsoever. And I started to think when I was going through that, oh my goodness, like other women that are going through this. And then also, the transition when you go through that, if you've had children, the children have left the home, right? Your identity is a big part of this, of recovery for women, right? Like my identity has changed. What I've known to be was as a homemaker and bringing up children and being a good wife. And then now that no one needs me as they used to have needed me previously before, right? Things have changed. My identity has changed. Who am I in this world? What have I done in my life? What is my purpose? I feel like, when you get into your 40s and 50s and certainly 60s, you kind of get into this developmental stage of looking back in this life review of like, oh my gosh, my whole life has been about taking care of other people. Where was I in the equation?
I had an awakening right before I turned 40, a
Yeah.
spiritual, everyone, a lot of people questioned if I was having a nervous breakdown or a midlife crisis of some
Mhm.
sort. I didn't identify that with that at all. I had an
Mhm.
awakening of, oh my God, this is why I have one life to live. Like, how do I want to continue living it in the next portion of it?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
everything shifted and changed. And it's honestly since that has continued to change. So I'm just hanging on for the ride.
Yeah.
Dana Carroll here says the world views hormones as weakness.
Oh,
When we
God.
learn about ourselves and our hormones can be a superpower. Well, Dana, I need to learn some of that because
Yeah.
I'm someone that as you're saying some of these things, I'm not into that phase yet. So it terrifies me because I already struggle,
Yeah.
like becoming sober and stable and mentally,
Yeah.
stable, like that there's still a time that I struggle, and that's once a month where I think I'm going crazy, but I have an app that tells me, oh no, you're not crazy. You should be feeling crazy right now,
Absolutely.
so that, some of it scares me, but again, my mom didn't have it bad. So like, I'm hoping that that's my path, but at least we have the support and the tools. Like you said, like
Mhm.
somebody facing this alone without the knowledge of mental health, without the acknowledgement of
Mhm.
real, out the acknowledgement of women struggling and women issues. Like if a woman's just going through that alone with no support, I that has to be way too hard.
Or if a woman is told by a physician, oh, you're at that, nothing burns me up more than physicians telling me, oh, you reached that age. You're just going to go through the transition. Just live your life. Nothing upsets me more, and I feel invalidated and unheard by talking about the challenges of going through the transition. It, you know, it brings up not just your body is foreign to you, it also brings up the reminder daily that our lives are in a parentheses. And when I say that, it's just, oh, I'm not a spring chicken anymore, right? I actually I have a parentheses. And so there's going to be aging that's going to happen. And okay, so what's the work I need to do now? Because I think a lot of the work too for women with menopause, and also if you're in recovery, whatever that is, mental health, eating disorder, substance use, is recognizing, okay, what do I need to do to be able to sort of sit and manage? Of course, grieve. There's the grieving process. I feel like that's important, but also to recognize, okay, this wave is going to come. How do I move through this wave versus panicking, shutting down, not reaching out to my community, joining some Facebook groups, finding a better, no offense.
Seeking
Find what, dear? I'm sorry.
solution. You're like seeking help and support and solution, and people
Yes.
understand you.
Yeah.
And when you say you find a new physician, is that what you
Oh, I
said?
was going to say, oh, and please, please, please never feel like you have every right to look for a physician that you feel is going to hear you and to validate you. And you can, and listen, I feel like it's your body. You have a right to be anxious about your body. You have a right to share your emotions and your feelings and your fears, and for the doctor to sit and to receive that and to try to offer some solutions. That's number one. And
Absolutely.
the number two, quickly, the last thing I'll say about that too as well is what I found with menopause, and hopefully this will help women in recovery, is that the more I did the work as far as to sit with the emotions and that I'm going to get through it, it's going to be a transition. I'm not going to have the solution's not going to happen overnight. I'm going to have to try different types of hormones over the count. I'm going to try homeopathic. I'm going to try different things. It's not
Yes.
going to happen overnight. Just
Right.
as we do as we're going through recovery, the transition and going through that is not going to happen overnight. So
Or
how,
any
yes.
transition for that matter. Like,
Yeah.
I've gone through divorces, breakups. My business partner and I are
Mm.
partners. parting ways in a very loving way, and he's following a new passion. But like
Mhm.
it's a whole new era. It's anything like this. There's no going to be. I'm going to instantly feel like safe, supported, secure, know the answers. Like none of that. Everything takes time and feeling through. Right. I'm a feeler through. I'm a feeler talker about her. Like, everything affects me on a deeply heart level, much
Mhm.
more than the average bear, I've learned, but I'm okay with that, you know? So
Yeah.
I feel like any of these transitions, like they're like, I don't have experience with the one you're sharing, but I just relate it so much to all of the life changes I've experienced as a
Mhm.
woman, as a mother, as a
Mhm.
woman in recovery, that I relate to, that
Mhm.
there's no quick fix. It's the
Yeah.
feeling through and finding help, you know?
And I think that as women, we put so much pressure on ourselves to be champions when it comes to going through transitions. Let's even forget menopause, just the transition of maybe getting through your year of recovery. My goodness, how challenging and difficult. It's not recovery is not for the faint of heart for anyone. It is not for the faint of heart. Anybody that is willing to step up and to just walk into that and just to take it day by day, you are a freaking warrior.
Great.
Period. I don't care what anyone says.
Yes.
So yeah,
Agreed.
I feel
Great.
like we go ahead. Mhm.
Oh no, there's a few. Can you see the comments or do you, because I
I
can't.
don't. I'm sorry, I don't see the
I'll
comments.
I'll read them because there's a few good ones. So we have
Good.
Melanie Knight who from LinkedIn who said
Yeah.
this is one of my biggest issues and our middle to older adult women clients. Later life
Mhm.
issues are so important to recognize and address. Um, do you have anything you want to share on that before I continue?
Uh, yeah.
We'll go
Yes,
on
I
comment.
do. Oh, yes, I do. I just do. I'm 54, so I just turned 54. So for me, I do. It's made me feel very unhinged, where I feel like my age group is the forgotten community. I do. I felt forgotten, sort of going through menopause. I've had some medical stuff happen with my eyes that I had been dismissed before to say, oh, it's you're getting older. You're just getting older. Just live life and just get through it. That I found that so offensive when it feels really scary for me to have to go through these medical changes.
Mhm.
Um, oh, like your back is hurting, your body's doing this, you're getting older. Like that feels very dismissive to me. And I do feel that the choices are much narrower too as you get older for finding good supportive care that you feel heard, especially if you're utilizing, I'm so sorry to say, we understand how insurance works too as well. So that becomes a big issue for me that, I'm willing to do private pay to be able to get the care that I need. But what do people do if they can't afford that and they're stuck with this healthcare system that's, that limits you from getting the best care that you deserve? It infuriates me. So
Yes.
in speaking about women recovery, we were talking about that access to care is thinking about not just about the aging community to not aging, but let's just say seasoned. We'll say more seasoned community is what we're going to say now. We don't say aging anymore. Mature, we say seasoned is the word we're going to use.
Experienced. You have like
More experienced, wiser community, more wiser. But I also feel like for women, it's the thought around access to care. Sometimes for women, they're in relationships so they don't have access to finances. Sometimes also too, there's childcare issues that we have to think about too as well. That has to be addressed. And I think sometimes people become very flippant about like, well, you just need to go and just surrender and just do it. And you're like, okay, but we've got to, what's the plan here? How is this woman going to be able to support her children? How is this woman going to be able to afford going to seek treatment when her insurance has limitations and she doesn't have access to her finances? Or, as you know, too, if you're working with any type of, and when I say domestic violence, that goes both ways. I've seen it both with men and women. So I'm not marginal for if any men joining here, please, please, this is just to have an awareness and to think of things. But even like when you're thinking about, in a DV sort of situation too, as well, I do think that becomes, then there's more limited resources. Perhaps if the woman has to go with the children, then what's going to happen, right? There's limitations there. So, these are just things. I mean, today is much more like awareness. Let's just think about these things. Let's ask these things. We're talking to somebody. I feel like we have a community here of people that are like myself who are supporting families to find placement and treatment, let's think about that before we immediately just go, well, they're not ready to go to treatment. But do we also ask them, do you need other resources? Is there
Of course,
something,
of
what are your
course.
barriers to treatment and how, is there something I can offer for you?
And being with the a woman and the continuous journey, like I'm 42 and I feel 10 times better, younger, more like I know who I am, what I want at this age than I did at 26. Like I feel
Mhm.
I feel like the more I grow and learn into myself, the more I like love embracing this age.
Mhm.
Maybe that's because I'm still in my early 40s. Maybe that might shift in 10 years, but like that's what I feel right now. Like I feel like I'm in the best time of my life.
Mhm.
And I've been through hell and back, I've been through so many of the things, and I feel like it's just helped me learn, and I come to the table with like a clarity of who I am and what I want. I
Yeah.
wish too
Yeah.
much,
But I
more.
think about, but, and I love that you, gosh, I think, and I agree with you too. For me, it's, the more seasoned and wiser I get, I'm so grateful to my higher source that I have all this knowledge and the community, my lovely, amazing community that I can always go back to in my time of need. But then I'm
Absolutely.
so sensitive when I'm talking to first of all, a woman, but number two, I become so sensitive to a woman who is sort of in my age group that's never really had that opportunity to lean into recovery, right? And how
Yeah.
scary that is for them to make that choice. You and I are talking about the judgments of like, what is my society going to say about me? What if other people find out? Like, how am I going to tell my work? How am I going to tell my partner? How am I going to tell my
Yeah.
children? Like,
Yeah.
people, are going to look at me a different way that I have failed. I have
Absolutely.
failed as a woman. And somebody said before, there was a sense of weakness, that I'm weak. I'm
Yeah.
not smart.
Yes.
These are like
None of
women thoughts that come up for us that we're not smart enough. I've made bad choices and it's my fault versus sure, but also there were some things that happened to you too. You faced some terrible trauma. Where did you forget in this story that you went through this horrible experience and
totally.
you were doing the best that you knew how to do? My four agreements followers here, doing your best. I freaking love that so much because I think that that's something to think about, that at the time you did your best with
Totally.
what.
Sometimes that best is just like being alive and healthy and in bed. That's some days the best.
Yeah. Well, for me to, and when I say this, that was then, that's not now, but for me doing my best was having the eating disorder because there was so much chaos going in my world. It was the only way I knew how to survive. It was my only, my life jacket. I was just in this, this crazy storm. And for me, that's all I knew at the time because I didn't
Absolutely.
have the skills. And I was so terrified of just admitting that I had an issue and I had a problem.
Yeah,
So,
me too. It was survival, like
yeah.
I come from childhood, like the big T kind of traumas, sexual abuse, physical abuse,
Yeah.
my sister was kidnapped in front of me. So I've gone through like all these things from 4 to 7. So of
Yeah.
course I turned to stealing things when I was a teenager to get outside myself, and then drugs. And then, in recovery for 9 years, then I started to have body issues I never had on my whole life, like eating disorder
Mhm.
body. And I was so ashamed. I was fine with telling you I was in recovery from drugs and alcohol. I was fine with telling you I was mentally unstable for a period of time and had all this trauma, but I was so ashamed of that eating disorder part.
Mhm.
It's baffling. It's very strange.
And I think a lot of people, there's so much, especially around, there's body image, but I also think when it comes to binging and the purging behaviors, that becomes a whole different type of shame that surrounds women per se. That, I should, especially like with some, I still feel like we've come a long way with body positivity. I'm so grateful for that. But I still feel that there is such a societal norm that we look a certain way,
Oh
right?
yeah. I
We
was in
can't
the
actually
entertainment
look.
business for 20
Yeah.
years, and I was praised and loved for this perfect little body that I had, and
Mhm.
like I was objectified for it and like all of those things. And like how could I not have gotten a little twisted on the,
Mhm.
you know what I mean? Like how
Yeah.
much do you weigh? What's your height? What do like getting weighed, getting measured, all that shit. It's traumatic. Um,
Very.
okay,
Yeah.
we have a lot of comments, so I want to kind of go through. So now, okay, so Blake said, I hope other men will join and listen to this conversation as gender identity. I have a lot to learn on this topic.
Thanks,
Then
and thank you, Blake, for saying that too. And I just, again, we want to be really sensitive that this is not marginalizing all men. And I think it's important for us as women to be educated as well, and having some sensitivity around males and recovery too as well. So I think it's important for all of us to make that commitment as well.
absolutely. I can't imagine. I can't even. There's been so many men over the past few years that have shared with me that their body dysmorphia or their eating disorder,
Yeah.
and that they're super ashamed because it's become that that's okay for a woman to share, but
Right.
like a man, like they're not supposed to. So I have a friend
Mhm.
that I actually encouraged him to kind of continue doing that work in his personal training business, focus on that, helping those men, because nobody's
Mhm.
doing that. And that's a bit like, if you get on there and you're like this jacked guy and you talk about your problems that you've had with your body, like so many people are going to connect and identify with that, and you're going to help a lot of
Absolutely.
people.
Somebody once told me, and I had a mentor who once told me that if you put, different genders in a room and you put their backs to each other and you turn the lights down, you change the voices, and you had male identifying, female identifying, even like different ages, but you put everyone their backs to each other, turn the lights down, change the voices, it would be very interesting that they all had the same theme. I don't feel heard. I don't feel loved. I feel scared. I don't feel validated. I'm nothing. So that to me is so fascinating that I think as human and as far as humans, we have very similar thought processing, that we all just want to be loved and validated. But that's I think that's the messaging. But then it's important to just have an awareness of, just as you were talking, okay, this is somebody who's telling me that they might have an eating disorder and they're so scared to tell their physician or a therapist or somebody else because they feel like other people are going to think they're crazy, and men don't have this. And
Right.
I do think that males are underserved with eating disorders. And let me also say, I think that women, I think a lot of people just assume that we just have eating disorders and we don't also have substance use disorder problems, right? And we're not also having other mental health issues as well too. So that's where I'm really passionate. Don't make assumptions. Please
Absolutely.
ask. Please ask lots of keep open-ended questions. Always keep asking. Always just, you don't have to know everything, but keep asking and keep your feelers up, and when a person begins to trust you, they will start to open up, and they'll start to divulge other things as well too, that you can help and support them.
Now, when I put the comment here like this, can you see this?
I can. Now I
Okay.
can see. Whatever you do, it's something magical.
So I
Yes.
don't know how I learned this one, but I just, there you go. So
Yes.
this one, there's two parts to this one. I completely get it about feeling invisible now that I've
Yeah.
gotten older. And then this next part is, Candace, I hear you. I definitely understand and can identify with
Yeah.
that.
And I don't know if this is helpful at all. I was talking about, I had gone through some medical issues with my eyes, and I really had to fight to find a community to be heard, because I felt I first of all, just so everyone knows, I had to literally go through probably like 20 doctors before I found the doctor that I loved and adored, that I felt heard from. And that was really scary, because I felt I had that, for me, what I felt was a very female identifying negative thought process. Candace, you're just being crazy. Candace, you're overthinking this. Candace, you're being too anxious. I can't tell you how I was just holding on for dear life, because my body was saying something is not right. This is not the right person for you. Something feels off. Just keep trying. You're going to find your community. You're going to find that physician. So I found the physician that I loved. And then, honestly, by default, you and I were talking, thank God for technology. I found two amazing Facebook support groups.
Love
And
that.
so I know that there are a ton of support groups out here for more seasoned women, if you will, going through menopause, going through life transition. I'm dealing with aging parents. Oh, let's talk about that. Aging parents. That when you become more seasoned and become more wiser, that's a life transition that sometimes, as a woman, not always, it's the expectation that we're going to take care of the parents, right? Because we're the caregivers, right? And we have that maternal nature, right? And we're the soft ones, and we're going to sort of do all that and the pressures of that. So I found an amazing Facebook support group for that too as well. So maybe afterwards I can find some specific groups, but my
Yeah,
encouragement would be
share them
that.
some of the links after, that would be awesome. And I'm kind of in a place where like I have, my 11-year-old daughter, an 18-year-old son, and then I also have, an older mom. My mom's not older, but she has some things and needs some support. So I'm kind of in this middle place where like I have a lot of stuff going on, but then I'm being pulled in those directions, and a lot is expected of me in both directions as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so here, how do you support yourself during eating disorder? What type of insights? I know that's so broad, but
Oh, it's
if
such a
you
great
can
question.
scratch a surface for
Yes. For me and my healing, and I love this, for me, what I found so meaningful was really leaning into my eating disorder as my inner child. Instead of telling my eating disorder, you are bad, that I need to get rid of you, you're ruining my life. It's so much of my work was, oh my God, my eating disorder is my inner child that didn't feel safe, that didn't feel heard, that didn't feel validated, that was really scared to stretch and to grow and to take risks because of fear of failure. Uh, the inner child who was completely exhausted because they were trying so hard to be perfect and doing so many things throughout the day. So it was really sort of having very intentional conversations with my eating disorder, AKA my inner child. What do you need right now to feel safe? What do you feel right now to feel loved and feel heard? Because for me, I was restrictive, and I did do some purging too as well, and over exercising. But to restrict meant that I felt safe and in control, because the smaller that I kept my body, the more I felt I was in control of how I looked and appeared in the world, that I had it together, and that I could show that I was attractive. Um, and if I was attractive, then I was going to have worth in this world. And so what I found was that's a fleeting and exhausting sort of, action, if you will, and value system. So asking your inner child, what does it need to feel safe? Honoring your eating disorder instead of blaming and shaming your eating disorder, honoring it, like really having in-depth conversations with your eating disorder, journaling, sitting, putting it in a chair, visualizing and saying, hey, I understand why you came around. You had this, very chaotic family. You had, a father who was very loving, but had, bipolar and a system that was so broken, where he was so over medicated, also had a cocaine addiction. That household was very chaotic. Of course, you would have an eating disorder. So finding forgiveness, talking to the inner child. And then the last thing I'll say is I was very, very fortunate that I found a really amazing, safe that was me, women's support group. And I found that therapist and the registered dietitian. So it's hard to find, but I tell people just keep looking and keep working.
Yeah, I think a great place to start
Yeah.
if somebody is just looking for help is finding someone who specializes in
Yeah.
as a background in eating disorder, such as a therapist, and then,
Mhm.
if there are additional things needed besides, the support group, the therapy, the dietitian, like you do need to go to a residential stint, that there's definitely no shame in that either.
Mhm.
There are wonderful eating disorder programs, all over that can meet you at whatever level you need as well. So it's a very customized thing, just like with any, I think mental health, with substance use. I think it's really a personal journey, and there's so many directions you can go. Okay, we're gonna go to our next one. Okay. Hormones and menopause is brutal. I thought I was losing it with the fatigue, brain fog, and vision. I finally got a blood test. I used my experience to get this message to my clients. I should have been put in a cage during that time of the month. There was so much shame around. Indian women are sent to the red tent for a reason. Women are called crazy when they are emotional.
Oh my goodness.
That's
Thank you.
heavy.
Yeah, I thank you, Diana, so much for sharing that. I'm so grateful that you mentioned that too as well, and just having some cultural sensitivity around menopause too as well, and even sort of cycles. That's an extra layer to add into this too as well. Culturally, how is that viewed, and what does that look like, and what does that feel like? And I do think that there is so much shame. I mean, for me, it was just a lot of fear because it brought up. Um, I can't control my body. Like, what's happening? I can't control my emotions. Like, I am so tired. What is wrong? I'm so exhausted and I can't. I honestly, guys, I thought maybe I need to get tested for like dementia here because like I'm being so forgetful now that and I'm not that type of person.
Right.
It was so
And you're beating yourself
um
for that. Oh my God, this is
oh,
not,
it was
what's wrong with me?
yeah, so terrified. And I do agree, like I was like, oh, now I felt so anxious. It was such an out of body experience. But yeah, I do feel like that's a conversation we should definitely have in the mental health realm. And I say that's the umbrella for substance use, eating disorders, mental health. We don't talk about it. And I feel like we really need to have an awareness. And there is hope. There's certain sort of stages of things you can try. I'm not a physician, so I have to be really careful. So I always just say, certainly go to support groups, find a really fantastic GYN, or also sort of these places that have these hormones, sort of balanced places that you can go to. But you can do homeopathic. Some people just want to do it naturally. That's great. I think a
Right.
lot of it's the emotional work too, as well. Okay, this is so exhausting and tough, but how do I lean into this instead of fearing that, it's the all or the nothing or personalizing it?
Yeah, escaping too, like, oh, I can't deal with this. This is too much. Forget it. I'm not going to.
Yes. Yeah.
Not a solution either. The avoidance.
Yes, yeah. Or being
Hard.
honest, I want to use again. I want to use again, or I want to relapse into my eating disorder because I cannot take this anymore.
Yeah, the
Or,
pain.
or I don't like, or you have to also think about menopause and how that changes psychotropics too. That's a good discussion to have around with your psychiatrist. If your hormones are changing, then obviously how you're metabolizing some of your psychotropics too as well.
I think with the whole the medical professionals. So like, on my team at Next Level Recovery Associates, we have our main psychiatrist we use, Dr. Alden Morales. He
Mhm.
specializes in, mental health and is also well trained in addiction. And he's taught me so much. I've done some lives with him about in the medical community how little they're taught about mental health, eating disorders, substance use
Mhm.
disorders. In med school, it was like at one point it was an elective, for psychiatrists, it was a
Yeah.
short 4-hour thing. So now he's now teaching a bunch of, he takes on students that are required to at least do like a few weeks and things like that with him, which is so great that the medical community is coming around because most people don't know, like, don't think to call a therapist. They think to go to their primary doctor or go to
Mhm.
their OB. And if they're not educated on these things, then that can make this whole, you know,
Oh,
find out what their knowledge is. Ask, just like ask
mhm.
questions. Find
Yeah.
out if they understand hormone, like where they stand. And you had to
Yes.
go through 20 doctors to get to the right one. Well,
Mhm.
sometimes the first therapist, the first doctor is not going to be the one that has the experience, but don't like let that stop you. Don't let that be a barrier either.
Absolutely. And I love what you said. I think we're so trained, and there are some wonderful primary care physicians that are out there. There are really some wonderful ones, but make sure they have a specialization or understanding in hormones. Or, it kind of burns me because I've had this situation happen to myself. They're like, oh, you want me to just give you a little something to chill you out versus sending me or referring me to somebody to talk about the root of the issue. They were just so quick just to write something, right? Just to chill, quote unquote, chill me out. That
Yeah.
was very frustrating and validating.
Yes.
Yes, thank you, Lynn. I've learned that you have to be your own self advocate. I feel like that's such a great thing to talk about too for women. I'm so curious how everyone else feels. Again, how I was brought up, and that's been my journey. And it's just so everyone knows, it still is my journey. Self advocating for myself, to not apologize and to say, hey, I need to advocate for my health. This doesn't feel right. I'm not feeling heard. I can't do this, and not apologizing for it. Because I feel like for women, I was brought up that way, that you never question physicians and you keep quiet and you just, if there's a therapist or physician or somebody who has like, the acronyms past their name, what they say is golden, and we all know that there's some people that you know, they might be licensed, but that doesn't mean they're the best person to go to for you. Dare
Yeah.
I say.
I shared with you that I'm having like a surgery coming up, and this doctor is like the best at what they do in this specialty for this particular
Mhm.
thing. However, like when I went to this doctor, is not my normal doctor, but because they specialize in what I needed help in, I was told, like, because of like my symptoms and things, to remove my uterus. That was one of the main options. And I was like, that's not really, or to go on birth control at 42.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going on birth control. I'm not removing my uterus. That's where my children live, unless you tell me there's something wrong with that. And I think, like, as you have shared this, I actually think that maybe after the surgery, I need to find a different doctor that can understand me better, because I feel like I haven't been fully heard, and it's extremely important that's not an option for me unless there's something wrong with any body part. No one's taking anything. Like,
Yeah.
and
Good for you.
I've had a whole grieving process around, coming to this age now where my son is 18, my daughter is 11. I always wanted another child, and I was going to freeze eggs about 2 years ago. And the fact of now, like, really coming to terms and the grieving that I'm not going to have more children is very heavy for me. And I think there's an acknowledgement for women that are going through that part. Like, there's that window for me is kind of closing, and that to me is, or women that have never had children, and that door is closing. That's an emotional a place for me. It's been very heavy.
Yeah. Well, I think there's also, you and I were talking about that too. I think that, there is that grief of, for me, it was the aging. I talked about life being in parentheses of like, I decided not to have children. So for me, luckily, when menopause hit me, it was like, okay, good. This is wonderful and great. But for me was the grief around, oh, menopause, my body's going to really start to age now because the hormones have changed as far as bone density, right? Thinking about just aging in general, just having the muscle, growth and all those things that we talk about as far as keeping our body healthy and moving. So I think grieving is important for us. And in talking about advocacy, being able to share that too with a physician, right? To say, in this grief, for me, psychoeducation, giving me more information helps me through the grief process. But if you don't tell me anything, then I don't know, and it makes me more anxious. So I also want to be sensitive in advocacy here too for those that do have to utilize their insurance. I do understand those challenges of finding that perfect doctor that you feel heard when you have to utilize your insurance. And sometimes you get lucky and sometimes you don't. So, I certainly want to put out there, please try to advocate. If you have a physician you don't like, then call. I don't know if it's possible. Call your insurance company, get a freaking list, and just it's worth it. Yeah,
it's work. It sucks for me because I had an insurance, and I had the best primary care doctor and the best OB forever. And then when I insurance changed, like this medical practice he treated he's on my Facebook, so you might see this, but Dr. Feliciano, he treats every patient like a concierge doctor. And that's what this is, an insurance-based practice. And after going to him, like, everyone's awful. And then after, like, the doctor that delivered my daughter, like, she would sit with me, her mannerisms, she would connect with me. She understood mental health. She understood recovery. Like, those kind of things, like, make the experience so much better. And I feel like right now I'm one of those people that's, like, kind of getting what I get because of my insurance, and it sucks. There's no comparison, but that doesn't mean I have to stay in this. There is, so like you said, the solution, it'll just take more work and more energy to find what I truly need again,
Yeah, absolutely too as well. And I think that, the work for me is just reminding myself that this is my body, right? It's not their body. They may be saying something. This is my body. And I'm allowed to advocate. I'm allowed to search for the right physician. I'm allowed to find the care that I need. I'm allowed to make my own decisions about my body. And that was really hard for me just because I was brought up in such a different sort of lens with that and sort of belief system surrounding that. And I think that, that even to this day, I still feel like when I leave some physicians' offices, I've gotten better about this. I'm like, gosh, I hope I wasn't too much for them. I just hope I wasn't too much for them. But I felt like I was being kind. Was I kind? Yes, I was kind, but I also was advocating for my health, and I was very clear about what I needed. And luckily I have, just like you, I have somebody I absolutely love and adore for my specific eye condition. So I got really, really, really fortunate for that. So
you got fortunate, but you did the work. You went to so many doctors to get to
doctors. It literally took, I will tell, if this is helpful for these lovely, attendees today. I did what's known as a decision tree party. And I got this idea from a dear friend of mine. Her name is Jill Lewis. She had done a party before. And a decision tree party is if you have big decision to make and you need your community of women to help and support you. And so what you do is you, whatever the decision is, and for me personally, I put literally, I think I narrowed down the 20 people to like 5 physicians, and I was going to choose one that I was going to stay with. So out of those 5, I had 5 poster boards, and I got like my very dear and bestest friends
That's
that I
so
trust and adore, and we just ruled it out. And so I put pros and cons of each of the 5 physicians
love
on
that.
these big boards, and we just marked out like in a point system. That's how I found my physician now, and it lined up with everything that she was she was a female identifying. That for me, she was a certain age that she wouldn't age out for me too, because I'm getting older. This condition is going to
Yes.
last. That,
Yes.
location was close enough for me. I feel heard.
Yes.
Obviously the credentials, blah, 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 blah. But it was like the decision tree party was everything. So I highly suggest that
I
for
love that.
everything.
I've
Yeah.
seen that in my life. I mean, obviously, sometimes I just make the decision on gut instinct, but I like that. I think it's a
Yeah.
much more strategic,
Yeah.
solid. So, okay, as we wind down, just what would you love to leave as like a kind of like final thoughts
Mhm.
for women? Like, what can they do what would you want to give to women that are seeking, of the many things we spoke of today, healing, hope,
Mhm.
recovery, proper medical care? Like, what do you want to leave women with today?
Sure. Don't forget how amazing you are, period. Don't forget what you've been through before. Don't forget what a survivor you are. You are not alone. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy. I'm not saying that at all, but you're not alone. You can call me anytime. I'm sure Amanda, you can reach out to. We got you. I mean,
Yes.
if someone's in recovery, somebody help me. I'm perfectly happy to pay that back. I cannot promise if you reach out at 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm going to return that call, but you can reach out to me and message me, and trust and believe we'll find some resources. But lean, if you can, if you don't have a community yet, what can, try to find a community, and that community can be anything. It can be spirituality. It can be something that makes you feel aligned and safe. And just please, 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 recognize all that you have been through and who you are, instead of what I don't have and the mistakes that I've made. Because I
100.
think as women, we carry that load, that we personalize it, that it's our fault.
Yeah.
And what I can't fix this or can't control this because I'm bad. I'm not a good woman. I've I've effed up, I've messed up, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not good enough. These are the messages we've received, I feel like, as women.
I'm
Yeah.
too much. That's the one I always answer. I'm too much. And you can be assertive and speak your truth and stand in your truth and not be aggressive. And like I didn't in
Yeah.
addiction, I only knew how to be aggressive because nobody heard me, and that's how I got
Mm.
it. And then I learned, oh, and then I became like a recluse and quiet. And then I didn't have a voice. And then now I
Mhm.
found a place where I will speak my mind only when needed. You know what I mean? I'm not going to
Mhm.
cause havoc and turmoil, but I stand in my truth. I speak my word. I stand up for myself when needed,
Mhm.
and all of those things. And that feels good. That builds esteem. That builds,
Mhm.
when you're having those dark moments and those dark times, like you can lean into that strength that is in there. You've seen it before, and you know that you're going to get through this. Like you have other things before. And being a woman's woman or a girl's girl for me has been the greatest gift in my healing journey. Like getting the opportunity to invite you on here today to, so to highlight you. Like I want to, they say iron sharpens iron. Like I want women in my corner that can teach me, that can guide me, that can support me. And I want to be able to do the same to others. And that to
Mhm.
me is like one of the most healing properties that I think I've encompassed in my
Yeah.
life.
Absolutely. And I love what you said about being assertive too, as well. I feel like that is something so important for us to recognize. You can be assertive and still have your voice lowered and still be, direct and specific, right? And we're allowed to be assertive, and we're allowed to voice and advocate for ourselves. But girl, there is nothing like women. Now there's wonderful boyfriends and husbands and partners, but there is nothing like our girlfriends. There's nothing like women having each other's backs, being strong in recovery. I feel like that's what we're so fortunate about, is that we can lean into feeling comfortable, like, calling our women friends and our women, and leaning into our women, our community of women, if you will, is so important to us as well.
Makes you feel not alone. Like you're crazy is that what they understand. And they're like, okay,
Oh,
this is,
please.
we're all going through this, like
Yeah.
it's the thing, it makes you feel
Yeah.
that with anything, anyone going through anything, there is other
Yeah.
people that are going through it, that you can find your people and you can get that support.
Mm.
It's out there. Like you said, there's a group for everything nowadays,
There
Um,
is.
so how can people find you, Candace, if they want to
Yeah.
find you? I mean, we did post your links on our social
Sure.
thread,
Yeah.
but like, how can people find you, and what do you do? Like, I know that you are an independent, but you also are with a wonderful company.
Yeah.
Maybe a little about them. Let's highlight them a little bit.
Oh, sure, no problem. So, one, I work for Galen Hope. We support primary mental health and primary eating disorders for children, all the way through adults. We also have housing for adults too, as well. Really, just in a nutshell, our belief system is community reintegration is incredibly important. It's very solution focused. It's very much about keeping a small census, creating a wraparound team, helping the person get back into their community. So that means daily exposures and experientials, not just in the treatment facility, but also in the community, which for me is incredibly huge, especially if you worked in an agency before. It's almost like we are incorporating a community social worker in the treatment team as well. And that community social worker also works as like the concierge case manager as well, daily working not only with you, but also your family of origin. So I work in outreach. And so I really fell into that. And the outreach for me is not just talking about the program, but very similar to probably what you do to Amanda, as well as many of the people that are joining today, is finding placement for families. Nothing brings me more joy than somebody who is calling and I have to scramble to find them the best placement that's going to work with their insurance and kind of what's happening for their presentation and criteria. And sometimes, as you know, it's very nuanced, but I love
Yes.
that so much. That brings me.
What they've been through that hasn't worked, so you can help them
Yes.
find, okay, this is
Oh, yes.
and
Yeah.
so knowing what they have, and like I had a family
Yeah.
call me yesterday with like all the things that they have done, and I thought
Yeah.
of all the things that haven't
Yeah.
worked,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
beautiful.
And so for me, it's so much more about not just doing the placement, but making that attachment and connection. A, you're not alone. B, I got you. You can call me. It's no problem. If you're not ready today, that's okay. Just give me a call because somebody else did it for me. Somebody else leaned into me. I'm going to give that back because I know that's the purpose that I'm here for. I may not have the answer right when you call, but let's figure something out. So there's Galen Hope. And then the other aspect is I also still hold a private practice. So I see adults, and particularly I really work with OCD as my jam. It's not the only part of community, but a big part of the clients that I work with who are suffering from debilitating OCD, surrounding fear and thoughts, compulsions, rituals. It can be external, but it can also be internal. And obviously I'm quite passionate working with women, younger women kind of going through the transition of just making their way out in the world and who am I and what's happening next, to women who are much more wiser and more mature who are going through life transitions. So obviously, because I've had a medical issue myself, I work a lot with medical anxiety. It's a thing. And I also work with a lot of women who are going through the transitions of either divorces, children have moved out, and it's kind of just exacerbated the anxiety for them, and some of the OCD symptomology. And so you can find me on CandaceDaleMckenzie.com. It's kind of a mouthful, so I'll say it again, CandaceDaleMckenzie.com. So, but you can find me via Facebook and Instagram. And a lot of the support that I offer is there. I'm very evidence-based practice, but which may sound sort of this, but I really believe in solution focus. I'm really a big believer in let's do it. You're coming. It's not a boot camp, but let's get into it. Let's be really specific about what your goals are, and then let's try to work on that each time weekly, and having very specific skill sets for you, and homework and things to address, and so that you're moving forward.
I love that. So you can come to Candace or myself for a non-shame based, loving approach.
Oh,
And
yes.
we talked about this before we came on. We'll meet you where you are. That's, I think, super important in today's recovery culture and mental health culture, really, to be approachable, to treat everyone as an individual, not that just because something worked for you or I, or we've seen work for other clients, like we hear and we listen and we ask questions, like you said, like ask questions. But thank you so much, Candace. I loved because a lot of people I have on, I know really well. And so this was also like an opportunity for us to get to know one another more. We have had a couple of interactions, but like now I feel like I really, I adore you. I'm so honored that you spent this time with me today. And, if there's people will probably continue to have questions on the different platforms. So feel free, if you didn't catch us live, to come back and ask any questions, send Candace or I direct messages. Again, I'm Amanda Marino, owner of Next Level Recovery Associates, and this is Recovery Solutions. And I thank you so much, Candace, for joining me today.
It was really wonderful. Thank you for the lovely gift to join today and discuss something I'm super passionate about. And I as well had a great time getting a chance to sort of collaborate with you. So I'm looking forward to more fun events like this. Thanks.
Absolutely. I said you need to be out there. You're incredible. So I was super excited to have this time with you today. So
that's very sweet.
Well, friend Andre, because I know Andre shared some of the posts. So let's say hello to Andre.
Yeah, Andre. Thank God for Andre helping me in my more wiser world where I lack social media. I'm not great with social media stuff. So Andre is fantastic for that. Yay, Andre.
Well, if you need any help, it's something I'm really good at.
Oh, well, I'll be calling you.
Of course. Yeah.
I need so much help in that area. So much help.
I'm like, listen, find some really awesome people out there that we, are working with or want to work with, because this is something that comes super easy to me. Media, social media, like all this stuff is just a natural thing for me. So I want to help people like you lift other women up in this way and help them and highlight them and or all professionals, anyone that's quality and like doing it. And this is a scary area for them. Like a bunch of my therapist friends in private practice, they were terrified to make their first reel, like their first, so I went to their office and literally made it with them. And then I've left and they've continued to make them every single week. So
that's fantastic.
Because it's scary. Like I grew up in modeling and acting, and there was something so weird about talking to my phone alone in my house. I can go in front of a whole camera crew and be fine, but give me my phone and alone and I'm like, this is weird, so I like to be that person. So if you need that at all, I'll come over and
I will be calling you so fast. You have no idea. I need so much help in that area. And I think that's that might be a good topic for you to discuss as far as the shame, the judgment, the fear, for myself or other people that really, how do you post? Where do you put the post at? Like, what am I supposed to say? Like, it's overwhelming too, because Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, TikTok, I'm just like, I don't have time in my day to figure this out. Like, totally. What am I supposed to do? I'm very confused right now. So
it's overwhelming. It's just one of those things that once you have like a little bit of an idea and a plan, or even just walk through some of the fears, because I also take a beating, you know what I mean? I mean, with this amount of screenshots that Blake and Sarah that work with me have seen that I've sent of people sending me awful things. Most of it's not like that, but you have to also like be ready for that. Like I was bullied my whole life. So bring it on with whatever you want to say to me on social media with the keyboard warrior hiding in his basement. No. You know what I mean? But that does come with it too. You know what I mean? Because when you get the positivity, you get the connection, you get the empowerment. You're going to get, I mean, if you go look at any post on anything, comment section, it's disturbing.
Yeah.
So why not me too? So there is a lot of stuff that you have to be ready for. And when I'm sensitive, I come off of all of it for a few months. When I need a break, I just come off of it. And I have the girl that works for me post, that's my social media manager, just post my stuff.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So I hide. If I need to go hide, I go hide. If I want to be out there, I go out there. But yeah.
Well, I will definitely call you, because I certainly have been in my shell for a long period of time. And it's really a lot of that too, just a fear of not really understanding how it works and all these different platforms. And it's like, oh, I really should sort of like address that. So thank you for sharing that. And I will be calling you.
And honestly, I want to be like completely honest, as being a girl's girl, like it is a damn shame for you not to be out there more. Like you need to be like, I think it's doing this, our community and our world a disservice for you not to be out there more. And I mean that from my whole
heart. Thank you so much. And that's very, very, you're very kind.
Like you're like, you need to be, people need to hear you. I saw these countless people you helped in this post and this thing today. So whatever I can do to be supportive. I've got your
You're
back.
so kind. Thank you so much. This was fun. I love doing this. Thank you so much. I'm so glad we got a chance to do this. Yay.
Yeah. And thank you, Danielle, for setting up. You rock, girl. All right. Thank you so much, Candace. Have a great day.
You too. Take care of you. Thank you so much, dear. And thank you to everyone.